On November 23, 1988, the world was introduced to a new version of Charles Dickens' classic story, A Christmas Carol. The movie Scrooged was directed by Richard Donner and starred Bill Murray and Karen Allen. It also featured appearances and cameos by Robert Mitchum, John Forsythe, Lee Majors, and many others. It was the first starring role that Murray had accepted after deciding to take a hiatus from filmmaking after the box office success of Ghostbusters and the disappointment of The Razor's Edge. Murray had initially turned down the role of Frank Cross, but, in the absence of finding another project that sparked his interest, agreed to do it on the condition of rewrites. He already knew the writers Michael O'Donoghue and Mitch Glazer from Saturday Night Live and liked the concept of a funny Scrooge that they had created, but felt that the family scenes and the love story needed some work. However, with all the work they did, the movie still differed slightly from the finished script and greatly from the writer's original vision. So what else got changed? On this episode of More to the Story, we'll explore 10 differences between the movie and the script. Number 1. Lee Majors. In the opening montage, we see an ad for a Christmas special called The Night the Reindeer Died, in which Lee Majors shows up to defend the North Pole against terrorists and save Santa. The original idea was to have Chuck Norris save the day, but he was unavailable. Fortunately, Lee Majors was available, and as a fan of Bill Murray, was glad to do a cameo in one of his films. Number 2. Lonnie Anderson. Another Christmas special that the fictional IBC network had scheduled was a murder mystery about a serial killer targeting sidewalk Santas. Lonnie Anderson would play the detective trying to crack the case in a show entitled Fat, Jolly, and Dead. Number 3. Brando. In the production of Scrooge that the IBC network is producing, we see comedian Buddy Hackett playing the title role. The actor they had originally envisioned was Marlon Brando. Number 4. The Picasso. In the film, Frank has a Picasso hanging on his wall called Woman with an Artichoke. When the ghost of his old boss Lou Hayward shows up, he sets it on fire. Multiple copies of the paintings were made for this purpose, but were never burned. Richard Donner kept one for himself, gave 2 to crew members, and gave the final one to Mel Gibson. Number 5. Elliot Loudermilk gets the blame. The story of Elliot Loudermilk, who Frank fires at the beginning of the movie, plays out in the script pretty much the way it does on screen. In the film, Frank gets a phone call about the disturbing commercial Elliot had warned him about, while in the script, protesters show up at the studio building. Frank instructs one of his assistants to tell them that the network shares their concern and that the executive responsible for the ad has been fired. When the assistant asks what executive, Frank tells him to blame it on Elliot. Number 6. Lumpy. In the film, Frank and Claire meet when she accidentally smacks him in the head with a door. In the script, Frank is at the ice skating rink in Central Park watching the skaters when one of them, Claire, loses control. She knocks over some other skaters and then falls over the railing right into Frank, knocking him to the ground and causing him to hit his head. She takes a look at the knot forming and immediately starts calling him Lumpy. Number 7. The Peace Corps. In the film, Frank and Claire's relationship dissolves over a disagreement about meeting some friends for dinner, all of which while Frank is on a break from filming the Frisbee the Dog show. Frank wants to blow off their friends in favor of having dinner with his boss, Lou. In the script, however, the disagreement is over joining the Peace Corps. Claire comes by the studio to tell him the good news. They've been accepted into the program and will be going to Africa. After wanting to join the Peace Corps earlier in the story, Frank is now reluctant and tells her to go ahead and he'll meet her there. The scene ends with her dumping a bowl of dog food over his head before leaving. Number 8. Bryce Cummings. The Bryce Cummings character is the same backstabbing conniver that was seen in the film. Frank takes an immediate dislike to him, referring to him as an LA slimeball, and upon meeting him, knows exactly what he is up to. He doesn't, however, express his reservations to his boss, Rhinelander. In the original script, Frank eventually has enough of Bryce and calls Rhinelander to get rid of him. Unfortunately, this happens at the same moment that the Ghost of Christmas Present shows up. The studio suddenly goes dark and Frank loses his phone connection. Number 9. Frank's funeral. When the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come shows up, he escorts Frank to his own funeral where he ends up in a crematory begging for his life. But in the original story, Frank is taken to a service in a graveyard where he sees his own name on a tombstone. He escapes to a nearby mausoleum that turns into an elevator, which then transforms into a coffin, and Frank finds himself being buried alive. Frank uses all of his strength to force open the coffin lid and suddenly bursts out of the elevator bank back at the IBC headquarters, only to find himself being confronted by Elliot. Number 10. The final speech. The end of the film is marked by Frank interrupting his own Christmas special to deliver a speech about the importance of the holiday season. Though there was a speech scripted, Murray veered from it and Donner's direction. He ad-libbed a good bit of it himself, ignored his stage markings, and even broke the fourth wall, none of which Donner was happy about. Claire is never introduced on television and instead breaks through the crowd just as Frank finishes. She wishes him a Merry Christmas, to which he jokingly replies, "Bah humbug," and the two kiss as the cast and crew look on and cheer. Though the film is now regarded as a Christmas classic, the reviews on its release were mixed. Roger Ebert called the film unsettling, and another reviewer wrote that it was unlikely to become a seasonal tradition. Even Murray was not satisfied with the finished version, saying that it could have been a really great movie, and complained that it was a big, sloppy film that had been shot too fast and that much of what they did was not in the final cut. Aside from the pressure of being the solo star of the film, Murray also did not get along with Richard Donner, once saying that they had disagreements every minute of the day. Writer Michael O'Donoghue was so unhappy with the final product that he once remarked that he only saw it one time and would never see it again. He felt that Donner didn't understand the subtle comedic elements and chose to concentrate on scenes that were comedically louder. No matter what the feeling was about the film at the time of its release, it now sits at the top of the must-see list for most people every Christmas season, and has indeed become a seasonal tradition. And now for some bonus differences. Legendary sea explorer Jacques Cousteau would have starred in a holiday special called Christmas Beneath the Sea. The security guards at IBC think Frank is a drunk and refer to him as Der Führer. Frank threatens his secretary Grace by telling her he can hire someone white. And painter Leroy Neiman, who Frank has scheduled to paint the Berlin Wall for Christmas, gets shot by East German guards. If you have any thoughts about the movie Scrooged, a favorite scene, a favorite character, or line of dialogue, please let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please hit the like button and be sure to subscribe so you can see what subject we'll explore next.